Hello and welcome to Lesson 5. Today we're going to be finishing up our tissue and histology portion of the course, and we're going to be talking about muscle and nervous tissue and also about wound repair. So there are three distinct types of muscle found in your body: skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle, and smooth muscle. And we're going to talk about all the differences in these types of muscles and where they're located. So skeletal muscle is probably the most known type of muscle. It's the muscle that is attached to your skeleton or your bones. It's under voluntary control, meaning that you can actually control it. As you're writing down notes right now, you are controlling all of the muscles in your forearm and your wrist. When the muscles contract, they actually pull bones in certain directions, which causes the body to move. A lot of times people think that it's our bones that are allowing us to move, but it's the muscles pulling on the bones that are allowing us to move. These cells are going to be long, cylinder in shape, and have multiple nuclei. They're also going to have what we call striations or stripes. So this is what skeletal muscle looks like underneath the microscope. So what I want you to see here is this would be one cell right here, okay? So that's why they say it's like cylinder in shape. The nuclei, there's more than one per cell, and they're pushed kind of up against the sarcoplasm of this muscle cell, or the plasma membrane of the muscle cell. And you can see throughout you have stripes, and those stripes are called striations. All right, next we have cardiac muscle. Cardiac muscle is found only in the heart, so it's literally contracting your heart and allowing it to pump. Just like skeletal muscle, it also has striations, but they're going to be uninucleate, meaning they only have one nucleus. And one of the really kind of distinct things about cardiac tissue is they have what we call intercalated discs. And they're going to look like really dark lines in the tissue. And these intercalated discs are where gap junctions are. Gap junctions, remember, allow ions to pass in between these cardiac cells. And this is what's causing electrical impulses to be produced so you can actually contract this muscle. It's also involuntary. That's a big difference between skeletal muscle. You do not have control over your cardiac muscle. All right, so if we look here, this is what cardiac muscle looks like underneath a microscope. And if I look at this picture over here, you see this really dark line. You can kind of see them throughout. Those are the intercalated discs. That's how you're really going to be able to tell if it's cardiac muscle tissue. If you're kind of confused on which one it is, if it's going to be cardiac, smooth, or skeletal, look for these really dark lines. Those dark lines right there are going to tell you that this is going to be a cardiac muscle. Okay, last we have smooth muscle. Smooth muscle is not striated like cardiac and skeletal muscle. They are uninucleate, so a single nucleus, and they're more spindle-shaped than cylinder-shaped. We find smooth muscle in the walls of your hollow organs. So this is how the stomach is contracting to churn your food and push it into the intestines. This is how the uterus is contracting when you're in childbirth. And these are even how blood vessels can constrict and dilate to control blood flow. Now, a really important term to understand is called peristalsis. Peristalsis is this wave-like motion that's constantly going to help smooth muscle contract. So this is going to move food through your intestines. This is going to help push urine out of your urinary bladder. And this muscle is mostly involuntary, meaning that you don't have a lot of control over it. So here's smooth muscle. It's more cylinder in shape, so you can see the shape of the muscle cell is a little bit different. And there are no striations. That's the big thing. Okay, nervous tissue. We already talked about how neurons are the main cell type in nervous tissue, and you've looked at neurons when looking at your cell diversity lesson. But nervous tissue is going to include your neurons, which are, like I said, that major cell type. These are what are actually going to be sending the electrical impulses to other cells. And then you're also going to have supporting cells, or we call them glial cells. You'll see both words, those are interchangeable. And these glial cells do various things. When we get into the nervous system in anatomy 2, we talk about all these different types of supporting cells. You have supporting cells that are going to help speed up transmission rates of nerve impulses. You're going to have cells that literally feed the neuron nutrients, so they do quite a lot. You even have your own white blood cells inside the nervous tissue that kind of scavenge for any foreign invaders. So nervous tissue, the big thing you're going to know is you're going to see there's going to be these huge neuron cells. And then surrounding these neuron cells, you're going to see all these other nuclei right here. Those are going to be your supporting or glial cells. So the last topic in our histology unit is going to be tissue repair and wound healing. So you've obviously had a cut. Everybody's cut themselves at one point in their life, or maybe you've had to have surgery where they cut open a certain part of your skin. But you're going to notice that you're going to have regeneration and sometimes even fibrosis. So regeneration is the replacement of destroyed tissue by the same type of cells. This is when you get a little paper cut maybe, and then you have new skin cells just grow on top of it. Fibrosis is the picture below. This is when you have a deep enough cut that the dense connective tissue in those lower layers of skin are actually going to form a scar. So let's talk about what happens when we want to repair a wound. First, we have capillaries becoming permeable. So if you cut yourself, the blood flow to that area is going to increase. This allows platelet proteins to help basically stop the injured area from bleeding. You're going to construct a clot so you don't have any loss of blood. And then you're going to form a scab. Underneath the scab, you're going to have granulation tissue forming. And the best way to describe this is if you've ever accidentally picked off a scab too early, the tissue underneath it is a very pink color. This is because you're literally in the building process of building new tissue. It's a lot of new capillaries, so that's why it's so pink, is because you have a lot of blood flow. You're going to have white blood cells in here that are going to come and help to basically eat away the blood clot that formed. And you're also going to start to form collagen fibers to bridge a gap if the cut was deep enough and you need to form scar tissue. Last but not least, you have your surface epithelium regenerating. So the scab is going to detach and you're going to see your nice new epithelial tissue below. Now, if you have a scar or a scar tissue formed by that dense connective tissue, then you're going to see that kind of white pinkish line from where that epithelial tissue used to be. So when we start to develop, cells begin to specialize very quickly, meaning that when you're first conceived, you are a little tiny ball of cells and all those cells are the same. And as you grow, the cells begin to specialize and have their own jobs. By the time you are born, most of your organs are formed and functioning. And cell division, or mitosis, becomes really important for maintaining homeostasis. What we just talked about on the past slides were becoming injured or having a cut, and then having to go through mitosis and create more cells to bridge the gap of that cut and regenerate new tissue. Interesting facts here, all of your cells undergo mitosis in your life except neurons. And this makes sense when we think about some of these nervous tissue injuries and disorders that we hear about in the news. Stroke, ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease. You probably remember the ice bucket challenge years ago. That was to support Lou Gehrig's disease or ALS. Spinal cord injuries. People with those type of issues don't really ever fully recover because they are not creating new neurons. Once the neuron is damaged, it's damaged. And then after puberty, only certain cells divide, one of those being cardiac muscle cells. So after puberty, your cardiac muscle cells become ameiotic, which means they lose the ability to divide. This is why when people have heart attacks or as they age, the heart just starts to get a little bit weaker and weaker and it's harder to pump. A few other kind of homeostatic imbalances with cells would be a neoplasm. This is going to be a tumor, pretty much. Benign means it's going to be non-cancerous, and malignant is cancerous. Hyperplasia is when the organs enlarge due to a local irritant or condition. We see that the breasts enlarge during pregnancy to start feeding the newborn. We also see during congestive heart failure that the heart definitely grows in size. And then atrophy is the decrease in the size of an organ. We see this a lot with skeletal muscle after an injury. The skeletal muscle kind of just shrinks down and it's really hard to get back to normal. That's why a lot of professional athletes have to go to pretty intense physical therapy after having surgery because they really need to build that muscle back up. So this is just an example of a neoplasm here. So you can see these cells are kind of growing out of control and forming a tumor. And then this would be an example of atrophy. So you can see here that this calf muscle looks pretty strong, okay? This would be your calf muscle back here. But this side looks a little bit smaller. So what I'm guessing is this individual had surgery on this left leg and is still recovering, so his muscles have atrophied. So that's going to be it for lesson 5. Make sure you take your notes, complete your tasks. You do have a larger project to do in this lesson, so please complete all of your tasks, fill in your note guides, and thanks for watching.